am a full-time student at UC Merced. My major is English and my minor is writing, and this will be my last year.
Oh, when are you graduating in the fall or in the spring?
That depends. That's to be determined.
Okay.
They're reviewing some transcripts, so we'll see what happens.
Okay.
So it could be summer or fall, so depending.
Oh, okay, cool. All right. Can I ask about majoring in English and then minoring in writing?
Yeah.
How did you get to that decision?
So when I came in, the writing major wasn't available. It was just a minor.
Yeah.
So I was just like, okay, well, that's it.
Yeah.
Easy. But then the major came out, and I was just, I've pretty much been almost done with it. And Degree Navigator is a little weird with like the way you switch things. And I was just like, I'm just gonna just finish the English because I'm going to grad school, so I don't.
Nice.
I'm gonna continue anyway, so it doesn't really matter too much. I mean, I would have liked to come in as a writing major because I would have had more writing classes, and that's really what I'm interested in. But it was cool. I enjoyed being subjected to like new literature that I would have never touched otherwise. So
that's cool. Have you applied to any grad schools?
Yeah, well, I have, and I'm also in the process of sending some material to them as well.
Ooh, yeah.
Some of them are local, some of them are not. So like Iowa, Brown, USC, Fresno, just it's kind of
so it is kind of all over the place. Mine was similar. I just applied. I just submitted like my last applications like earlier this month actually. Mine are the same. Like I have like Long Beach, and then I'm applying to one in New York. So that's cool. So good luck to you.
Thanks. Likewise.
Yeah.
Which one in New York?
Bard College.
Yeah, I used to live in New Jersey, so I'm really familiar with it.
Oh, nice. Actually, I think I remember that because when I was in the Vernal Pool the first time, was that also your first semester in the Vernal Pool?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. I think we both came in at the same time.
Okay.
I've never been there before, so yeah.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Okay, nice. So what made you get into writing?
Writing? I think for a while there, I never really asked the question of like, I asked the question of what I wanted to do. Like all of it just seemed like really, painting or just doing different things, just artistic kind of expressions. And I never really felt like courageous enough to actually answer that question because of, I have to think about finances or I have to think about this or that, whatever. And then I think when COVID happened, it was just kind of like death is around the corner. So I was just like, if I would die, would I be happy with what I've done? And then it just kind of clicked, and I was like, I don't have time to kind of just, So I just decided to jump into writing. So it was just, when that happened, it was just very clear, like that's what I've always wanted to do, but I just never thought it was possible. Yeah. So then I was just, well, it doesn't really matter if it's possible or not. I'm just going to try it anyways. So yeah, that's kind of how that came together. And then writing is my favorite of all the forms of art that I do because I feel like I can spend more time crafting, and it's an internal process as well. And I have always written, but I've never really done it serious, like taken it like, I don't want to say taking it seriously, but just
like seeing it as like a full career.
Yeah, I never thought of that. But I am thinking of that now. So
that's really interesting. That's a lot later than I guess most people, because you ask other people and they'll always be like, oh, it was something I always wanted to do and I've always pursued it even since I was a kid. So it's really interesting that you took that turn, super recent kind of too, because of the pandemic.
Yeah. It was not that long ago, and like I said, it's just mainly because like you think about your mortality, you're like, I'm gonna die one day or something, but it just feels really far away. But when something like that, when you don't know what that is and people are dying and you're like, man, that could happen at any time, and then it just kind of makes you reassess everything. And everything that's important is very clear. It's just like, oh yeah, absolutely. If I'm gonna die tomorrow, I just want to do what I like to do.
Yeah, you should be pursuing what you love. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so that's kind of how it happened.
Wow. So do you have like a specific style of writing you like engaging in? Like, do you prefer writing fiction, poetry, analytical writing?
I have a different relationship with all of them. It's kind of like, like choosing your favorite, like your best friend. You don't, like, you have a best friend right now, but if you feel like partying, you go have another best friend.
Yeah.
Or if you feel like staying at home, you haven't, you know what I mean? So it's like, they're just different people I like to hang out with, different parts of my psyche. I think poetry feels the most natural, like it just comes out really easily. Fiction is something that I'm like, I've never really truly like really tried writing. It's mainly been either free verse or poetry forms or stuff like that, but I've never, so that's the newest addition, so I've gone to a lot of workshops and kind of seen what, and then you, when you read, you're also when you read the first time you read like an X book, like Great Expectations or something, you weren't thinking of like how they were writing or the writer. You were just like, the story is cool, and at least for me, and that's it. But now when you revisit it, you're like, oh, this is what they're doing. This is kind of the different styles or the different devices that they're using, and things like that. So it's different. But I can't say I have a favorite. It's just kind of like however I'm feeling. But I love crafting a story. It's really cool. It's difficult, but it's really, really fun when you kind of see it all, like, okay, it's there. Like, that's really fun. And then just kind of threading little things throughout. It's fun. It's difficult. 2,000 words, I feel like that's for the short story genre. I think that's as far as I am willing to go at the moment, even though I'm writing a novel as well. I am moving really slowly with that, just because it's really difficult. Like, I find 2,000 words difficult. So a novel, I'm saying a novel because I don't really know the length actually, and it just keeps growing because it was originally meant to be a short story, but I couldn't confine it, and then it just got out of hand, and then I was like, okay, well, I guess this is a chapter, and then I'm just kind of, you know what I mean, and that just kind of grew on its own. So. Yeah, sorry, long...
No, good. This is great.
Long rant on... But essentially that's the... I like all of them at a different time. If I'm feeling emotional, I think poetry is the best avenue. And if I'm, usually... I have, you have therapeutic forms of writing, where you're writing something about your trauma or your experience, something that you didn't like, and then you put it out there, and then you can just have everybody do different things. So it's kind of like a simulation, like you just simulate whatever, and then you can kind of see it. So that kind of sometimes triggers like something in you, and you're like, oh, so it's fun.
That's great. Actually, I'm so glad you brought up that you sort of lean more towards poetry, because when we get into the actual pieces, I noticed that you write short stories really poetically. And so I can't wait actually to talk about that, because I noticed that when I was reading them. So where would you like writing to take you?
I would like to just write, essentially write novels, have times of isolation, and then just come out and just be like, I have something. I would love that. I'm an introvert. I'm very I understand extroversion. I understand how to speak to people, but I kind of depending on the conversations, if they're really dry, hi, how was your day? Good, and you? And that kills me. So I'm just I can't. And so I think that would be ideal for me to just write some things like novels or some chapbooks or whatever, and then come out, release them, spend some time, and then
do a book tour and then disappear again. I get it. Would you ever like to publish a book of poetry?
Yeah. I have a lot of poetry that I've been putting together, and I've made chapbooks. I've never tried to get them published, and I'm happy that I didn't, because when I look back, I'm like, okay, this is not, I think I got I submitted something really early on into the New Yorker, and when I got the reject, after, if you don't receive a word from them for 6 months, that's a rejection. That's how they roll. So when I submitted the same story somewhere else, then I got it back and they were like, oh yeah, this is rejected. I was like, yeah, you should have rejected that. In my head, I was like, absolutely, yeah. So sometimes it's kind of, it's kind of in that process so I'm still figuring out a lot about my style and a lot about like the rules, and that's really the place that I feel like there's a quote by Picasso says, learn the rules like a pro so you can break them like an artist. That's where I feel like I'm at. I'm learning the rules right now.
Nice.
So, so I just want to.
Yeah, it makes sense, especially since you had made like the decision so recently to kind of turn to do writing. Yeah. Wow, that's fascinating. So you used to be in the Vernal Pool.
Yes.
What was your position when you were in the Vernal Pool? Managing editor.
Editor, yes. Editor I did it for 2 semesters. 3.
I think so. You did it last semester. You did it the semester I was in it.
Yes,
that's 2.
So that's 2. Yeah, 2 semesters.
Because you're not in it this semester.
Yeah, no. Did
you enjoy your time in the Vernal Pool?
It was awesome. Yeah, I wish I could do it again. I would say that Professor Callie not being there was a kind of an easier decision for me to just be like, okay, maybe I'll just take a semester off and just focus on some other classes. And also because there's a workshop that I really like that takes place at that time.
Oh, yeah.
And then I was like, fine, this is a good time to kind of break off and do that. So
you've submitted, I counted 3 times.
Yeah.
I'm looking at 3 pieces. Fall 2021, spring 2022, fall 2022. Fall 2021, you were not in the Vernal Pool, right?
No.
Good, because I wanted to ask what the process is like getting published in the Vernal Pool when you're in it and then when you're just submitting.
I felt like being outside of it, it was just like you know less because you don't know what the deadlines. When you're in the Vernal Pool, like, hey, this is coming up, so you know what's coming. And when you're not, you just receive an email out of nowhere. You don't know the time, you know what I mean? But when you're in the Vernal Pool, so if somebody's nervous about like what the decision is gonna be, it's easier to be in the Vernal Pool just because like, hey guys, in 2 weeks we're gonna make a decision, or like, hey, why don't everybody vote on this? And then you know why things are taking a certain amount, you know what I mean? So it's easier. And then when you're not, and then if you have trouble with that, then that's difficult because you're like, oh my God, they rejected me because they haven't written me. They should have written me by now. Like, who knows, whatever. So, so I think that's the biggest part of it. And then of course, being involved in the process and seeing how voting takes place and how something gets rejected, accepted with edits and all that stuff. So I think that's the biggest change, I think.
So moving on to the pieces, we're going to go backwards. We're going to start from the most recently published piece, and then we're going to go to the back.
Sure.
So I have a little anecdote. So this is The Comfort of Mother Sickness. So this was the very first edition of the Vernal Pool that was physically published. And I was also published in it. And I remember I took the book home, and my mom and we read through it together, and we got we got to your piece, and she loved your piece.
Oh, cool.
She actually had her own kind of like, I hope she doesn't get mad at me for saying this. She had her own like anecdote because my mom had like a very rough relationship like with her mother, and so I think that there was a little bit of like this feeling of like relatability, and it kind of resonated with her. And I loved this piece. I think this is my favorite piece of yours. This one in Caged Birds, I would say it's a tie. And this is the one where I was reading it and I noticed that it was in fiction. And when I had read it, it felt like I was reading poetry. Is that something that like, is that like a chosen style for you? Did you notice you were writing it poetically? Did you choose to do that? Like,
when I read fiction, depending on what I'm writing, I think there's a way that you can kind of display that without taking too much attention, taking too much attention away from the piece, because that's really kind of the intention of, the prose voice, not to take away from, and also not to be confusing, just to kind of be a little bit more, just like we went here that way, kind of, but I think that there's a place for it. I'm still playing around with it, but I like to kind of embody the feelings that are going on, and not only just like whatever, if it's I choose setting to pay attention to, or whatever it is, I like to just kind of use that the poetry to inform you of other aspects of that experience, So it is intentional, but it's also something that just wants to come out all the time.
Yeah.
It's like, I want to play. And it's like, okay, just for a little bit. Okay. You know what I mean? So.
You do have a very distinctive writing voice, which I really appreciate. I have like a thing for it because I love reading. And so I love when people have you can always tell when it's someone writing it specifically. And your writing really embodies that sort of, it's very distinctive. So on this piece, The Comfort of Mother Sickness, can you tell me more about it?
Yeah. So my mom comes from a long line of women that just didn't know how to mom, you know. They just, and they have, I mean, like, my mom never got a hug from her mom. That's, to me, I was like, what the hell? Like, it's crazy. I can't think about that. But I remember, like, an early image of my mom hugging me, and I felt like it felt weird. If I don't know if you remember being a kid and like you hug somebody and it feels strange, like they don't know how to hug or something.
Yeah.
Like all those people are just like, you know, just like a little pat and just like, okay, just like.
Yeah.
My mom was like that. She always had an excuse. When you hug her, she would just be like, "You're wrinkling my clothes," or like, "You're damping my hair," you know, just whatever. But that's the way that she did it because she didn't know how to handle those emotions, you know. She just didn't know how to receive a hug because she never got one, so she felt strange. It's like, you know, so and then her mom, the same thing, and then goes back pretty far, you know. So there's tons of like, you know, mothers that didn't give that. So there's that line, and so that's kind of. And this is all stuff, by the way. I've read this to my mom. I've told her everything that, you know, that we spoke about, because I just don't think that there's time to not be honest, you know, and just kind of be like, this is how I felt, this is how I feel, you know, whatever. Like if your intention was different, I don't know. But so, anyways, and the nanny that I mentioned, Pilar, she was like my mother, like my emotional mother.
Yeah.
You know, so that I feel like she really covered that space, and where I really needed love at that time, but my mom was just unavailable. She just, you know, and she gave me everything that I needed. So just, you know, she's a big part of it too. And I don't know, I don't know if certain people have like a connection to it, because I was born in Ecuador, and there having a maid is not like uncommon. It's very common there.
Wow.
You know, even if you could be maybe lower middle class and still have you know. So it's very possible. And so she ended up, you know, taking that place, and I remember at the beginning, I would try to get my mom pissed. Just be like, I would say like, "I love you, Mom," to this lady, and then she wouldn't say anything. She would just, and I feel like deep down in her subconscious, she kind of was like, "I'm gonna hire somebody that can do something that I can't."
Yeah,
you know, and that's what I think, anyways. And so that's the
wow.
story.
So this is a really personal piece.
Oh yeah.
That's good to know. I feel like a lot of people can somewhat resonate with it. My mom has never been like affectionate. She can be. I think as she's gotten older, she's like changed and developed, like have that sort of like honesty. And so I remember like reading this, like I'm very affectionate with my family, and they kind of get grossed out. Like they're kind of like, "Ew, don't touch me." Like, they don't like it at all. And so when I hug them, they find it like awkward and weird.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself like, how is your relationship now with your mom?
Oh, it's really good. I mean, it's very open, you know, and just kind of. My sister was a big part of that, because she's kind of one of the person. She'll be in a room. She doesn't care about saying, you know, dropping a bomb, and that I'm the one that has to kind of mediate the situation. So because of her, it's moved pretty fast, and she said things that were like, now this is in the open, so now we got to talk about it. So it's a good relationship, and she still has trouble, you know, with the concept of motherhood and you know, and affection, just because they're just things that she never had. She raised herself.
Yeah.
Her mom was like unavailable. Her father passed away really early, and she has a twin, and they just basically erased each other.
Wow.
Like, she was just not there because it was too much trauma for her at the time, so she kind of shut down. So because of that, I think I pay attention to that, motherhood and what it means to be a mom versus what it means to be a dad, and that whole thing. And there's a lot of juxtaposition in a lot of places that they're like, it's like the same, it's just a different type of energy. But yeah, so it's good. It's very open, I still, I'll bring something up and I'll tell her, so I think that's better than just not saying anything and just keeping it to yourself, just like sharing, because you both can grow from it. So
if it's not too personal, you had mentioned that you had read this story like with your mom, you had told her about it. Yeah. What was that like?
She wasn't so surprised.
Yeah.
That I've written other pieces that are like pretty brutal. and she's been like, I didn't know you felt that way or something like that. But this one, she just like, she understood, and she was just like finds it like sad and interesting, So she'll tell me like, wow, it's really sad. And it's like, that's what, I was feeling. So it was, I think that the first piece that I read to her was like, oh boy, like how she's gonna react, but she was really cool about it. But with her, you just never know what's going on. She's one of those people that keeps everything.
Keeps everything in.
And my sister calls it like, I forget what a Scorpio. I think something.
Is your mom a Scorpio?
I think so.
So am I.
Yeah, so I think she mentions like Scorpio vibes or something like that, and I was like, okay, yeah. So she keeps everything like you don't know, you don't like at all.
Yeah.
So who knows? That's why I wrote another piece about fever and saying like I guess I'll never know, because that's how she is. So
yeah, that's really interesting to hear. I think I have a question that asks about like, do you think that this piece resonates with a lot of people? Do you think that a lot of people would be able to relate to it?
I think so. I think the part about the maid, maybe not, or like, or like the sitter, maybe not everybody has had a sitter that they have that connection with. But I feel like we have all had a sitter that we had oh, they're cool at least,
Yeah.
So, but I think that overall it will touch lots of people. Hopefully, have them like start a conversation about this.
Yeah.
Just be like, what happened? Because for a long, like you go through bouts of like when you learn something. You learn something about your mom at the beginning. It's like, wow, why would you do something like that, right?
Yeah.
And then you evolve into, okay, like judging to like questioning, and that's where you can kind of find out something. Like, what's happening like here, like I want to like, why did you get an abortion? Why would you do that? It's so terrible.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, so why did you get an abortion?
Trying to like understand.
Yeah. So I think we're just too quick to go to the point where it's like judging versus understanding. So I think that a lot of people will resonate with the unavailability of a mother if that was there, at least emotionally. Like they're saying the right things, but the content isn't there or something. And a lot of people won't too. But they will be able to understand, I think. So you can take it, probably read it about your mom, and then apply it to your dad.
To like a different relationship.
Exactly. So.
Yeah, you mentioned that like idea of like truth, like understanding, and I think writing is such a good way of like putting out feelings and thoughts and really going through the motions of understanding what had happened to you.
Yeah.
And it seems like that's what you kind of use writing a lot for, like with your poetry, with the fiction. And I like really admire that. Is that what you think you use it for primarily, of like?
I think in a way to explore,
Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't really have to do with myself, but like sometimes I'm moved by a writer, and I'm like, oh man, they're so brilliant. I want to try that technique. Or I want to spin something like Mario Vargas Llosa wrote this book called Death in the Andes, and I was just so blown away by his ability that I was like, at some point I was reading, and you know how you just, sometimes you read and you're just like, I don't want to pay attention, I just want to go like, and she went to the store and blah, 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 you're just kind of zoning out a little bit. And I did that for a moment, and then I was lost, and I was like, wait, what happened? And then I go back, and I realized that he wrote a book in a way that if you do that, you will be missing a lot. And I'm like, oh, interesting. So what he does is he'll start a story, like two people, armed guards, are like waiting for somebody to come in, and then they're like, oh, come on, tell me a story about the girl, you know. And then he tells the story, and then they're like, okay, stop. Hey, wait, who is that over there? And then you're back. So you're like, wait, no, I want to hear more about that one. And then it's just like, there's so many, he does that so much that I was like, man, this is so really cool. So it's kind of like, you start multiple lines, and one of them will be interesting to you, the most interesting. And that will continue to happen throughout, you know. So I did one on interruptions, you know, like this person is in the car, a person is talking, the phone is ringing, there's like somebody calling, it's texting, like there's just a lot of things that are happening. So you're just kind of like, you're kind of forced. And I noticed that those moments have a way to force you into it, because in order for you to, like, there's a text coming, and then somebody just said, hey, then you're just kind of like shifting your attention. And it's kind of like, those short moments are kind of like scrolling through TikTok, you know, like you watch one video and then to the next, and then to the next. You have to pay attention, right? So I kind of, you know, so sometimes it's about that. But it's definitely about like exploring, and in some of those pieces that are more personal are definitely exploring my experience, my emotions, my, you know, whatever the situation is,
So it's not so much that it's, each piece is like reflection, it's so much that you're trying to explore different concepts. Right,
yeah. Usually it's not like the moral of the story is, but it's just more of like, this is what happened, you know? And what you're watching is just kind of the result of a kind of like a little journey that I went on, and I was like, okay, so this is memorialized as the journey into understanding why my mom is this way, you know, and it's just like a continuous, you know, just like little kind of vignettes of like or little photographs of, you know, where you went, you know.
That's a perfect segue, because my next question was going to be, could you see yourself developing this piece any further?
Definitely could, because there's so much content in here. Because there's like a historical side of it. Like I was telling you, this is not just like one mom's doing. This is just lines, you know, of, you know, mothers. And there's, in my family, there's tons of folklore. There's really lots of mysteries and really, really weird things. Like my mom, like my grandma, they went to the circus, and one of her children got stolen.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so I was just like, what the, how does that even happen? You know, and she said they were stolen by the Gypsies. So that already like started like, because like the Gypsies would come to like open up a circus for a certain amount of time, and then would go to the next place, and then they would disappear. And that's kind of, you know, happened in Ecuador. So she was like, they were stolen by the Gypsies. And I'm like, how do you know they were the Gypsies? And like, and all this stuff. And for some reason, that's still a mystery. And sometimes I'm like, was that child stolen, or did she give it away? Or like, I question that sometimes, you know? So there's a lot of that type of stuff in the family, not specifically.
So it's like your like family lore.
Exactly. There's tons of stuff like that. Very weird, you know, situations. Like, you're like, what? Like, I don't know about that. Like, that doesn't sound... But, so there's a lot of, you know, the only thing is just like, writing it as a creative, like maybe like as a nonfiction, I'm not really super attracted to, because I don't want to just relate the facts, even though they are interesting. I don't just want to relate the facts.
You want to tell the story.
I just kind of want to. I don't want to have some space to kind of, you know, say, hey, like this, I'm not into it. It would be interesting to see this happen in this part, and then kind of see how that plays out. You know, because that's kind of what you're essentially creating. You're creating a story. You're creating a film. You know, when you're writing your story, and you're just kind of like this would be cool to see. This would be really boring. Like, I don't know if you ever seen a film called Open Water, I think it's called.
Yeah, actually. Yeah.
I hate that film. I think that's the worst film ever
Oh my God,
created.
really?
Yeah, I think so.
That's so
like,
funny.
I loved like the the preface and like I was like, man, what? Like, this is real, true story. Like, I was like, I'm in. Like, I was so excited, and the whole movie, I remember feeling like I'm gonna give it another couple of minutes, and then I did that the whole movie because like the thing is like they're just on the water and they're just talking. It's like, okay, what's happening? Oh my God, there's a shark. Did you feel that? I don't know. I felt that. Oh man, what are we gonna do? I don't know. I'm tired. Yeah, me too. I'm hungry. What is that? You know, like, what the hell? Like, what are we doing here? So it's just kind of like, if it was me, I would think about like, what else would I like to see there, and then just kind of like, oh, the shark pops up and then down, or like the person gets pulled down like they did, just whatever, just different things, right? So so essentially that's kind of what we're doing all the time. We're just seeing like what, and if you do it with real people, that's very interesting. It's like, how would your mom react if you started yelling, "I hate you"? Like, what would she say? And that's an interesting like view. Like, I wonder what she would say. She might flip out at me. No, maybe she would. And then that's the kind of, like little thing that I like to do too,
So what are you hoping people would get out of that piece specifically? The comfort of mothers?
Just questioning, like questioning and connecting, just like question like your relationships, question them and ask and question them, like, what do they mean to me, but also to the other person, and connect more, because you might have an idea of what they think, but if you don't ask, you'll never know. You know what I mean? You might be living in an illusion, just like, oh, they love me, and when you ask them, what do you feel about me? I hate you. What? Like, that's crazy. I didn't know that. And then you find out why, and things get more interesting the more that you dive into it. So I think I would like to have people just be a little bit more curious about their own, lore, just whatever, their own family. So, and connecting and to understand, because I think that ultimately it's easier to let things go when you understand, like I could hate my mom and be like, oh, you weren't there for me and all this stuff. But then the more I understand, the easier it is. Like, dude, this is doesn't even start with you. You're just a result, of something else. And you can take that position, but you can also take the position of like, well, you're still responsible for your own life. Yeah, like you were still my mom. Exactly. So So it's pretty complex, but there's a lot of space in there to play with. So
you sort of like brought up, which I think is kind of follows the concept of caged birds, where you brought up that relationship of like one person may be like, oh, I love you, and then the other person's like, I hate you, which is essentially what caged birds is. Yeah. And I was going to save that for the last one, but I guess I'll just move on to now since I've kind of already like brought it up. Can you tell me about this piece? I feel like I want to say caged birds is the most controversial, quote unquote. Not necessarily that it's like problematic, but in the way of like, there's like this like twist in the end, sort of, where it's like an implication that the protagonist is like pregnant. So can you like talk more about this one?
So I think that like, so the whole thing about being caged, right? I think that there's like this sense of like, number one, it's like what marriage means. I think that for what I understand now, I think that that marriage is something that was created, right, by someone other than you. So whenever you start something like that, you're gonna fail, I think, because, like, say for example, if you ever been to a yoga class or a martial arts class or whatever, something that is a form, you're always trying to, like, I gotta make sure that my torso is just right and my arms, and you're trying to copy it so well. And if you do to a really high level, you become a really good copy. That's as far as you'll go. But if you create it with your body in consideration, then you will take it to a different place, because you're like, that's not how my body is aligned, or that's not how so then you will create a new system that fits you. So I think that in Caged Birds is kind of like talking about, like like an institution, like marriage, or something that was not created by you, and you're trying to fit in, and then you're not, and the worst part is like where one person is very aware and the other one is completely unaware. Like one person understands like this is where we're at and whatever, and the other person has no idea. Like, hey, I want to break up, and the person's like, what? I thought we were gonna get married. Like, dude, you're so off. You know, like, we're definitely going the opposite direction. What? How? Like that's the disconnect. You know what I mean? So I think it's talking about that in specific and all the ramifications that come with it. When a person and the other person too is aware but is not doing what's necessary, right? And that's the other part too. It's like, you know what you have to do, why can't you do it? You know you got to break up. You have a toxic relationship. Why are you not breaking up? And then it's that kind of too that, you know, so there's a lot of like, you know, little things that I kind of played around with in there. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does. It's actually, it's so, because when I read the pieces, I try and like interpret them. The one that's this is a different topic. The one I struggled the most with was I Hate You Fever. But with this one specifically, it's so interesting because I read it as very like black and white. I read it as like, okay, so I sort of empathized with the protagonist, and I think that's because I made the assumption automatically that the protagonist was more like a feminine person, it was a more feminine voice, and that the other, like their deuteragonist, the person with them who was like, hey, I made you breakfast, I did all this, was a man. And so I had this like empathetic, almost sympathetic response to the main character, where I was like, oh, well, I don't know the full story, so maybe he seems like he's kind and he seems like he's nurturing, but I don't know everything. So I was like trying to hold out, like making an opinion. Even when they were like looking at the knife and they were contemplating, I was still like holding out because I was like, no, like I get it. I've been there. Like I know. And then the way you describe it is so like gray, where it sounds like you kind of want everyone to consider both points of view.
Oh yeah.
So they're not it's not necessarily that one's the villain and one's the good guy. It's both that it's like, well, everything has its ups and downs and we can't make any decisions.
Yeah, and I like to leave a lot of room for play, you know, which is why, if you notice, this can be read in a couple of different ways. Like it can be read as they are actually birds, and it can be read that they're people, you know. So I like to kind of play with that kind of surrealistic possibility, you know. So I also like to kind of leave room for that to happen. And there is like there is the theme, right? Which is that's really the subject that I would say if there's anything that's that. The rest is like a lot of little details that you will buy into because of who you are, you know. I believe that this is wrong, so I'm gonna be part of this side, or like I understand why they do that, and so just kind of, you know, lets you play and then align with whatever makes sense for you, you know. So
it kind of like played like right into what you wanted, this like idea of like interpreting.
Yeah, I mean, there's a space like that, you know, but there's also obviously like the, you know, like the things that are actually happening, right?
Yeah.
But you, like I said, a lot of space for play. So.
Okay, that's really cool, because so this set sheds like an entirely different light on it. Okay, interesting. I like that. Thank you. And so going to the other piece that I wanted to talk about, which was I Hate You Fever. What? I don't want to be like, what do you mean? But I was at such a loss because I wanted to assume when I had read it, it seemed like it was trying to kind of convey like this idea of the heat, like this fever, that it was unwelcome and yet reluctantly accepted. And this can translate to so many different kinds of situations. So can you tell me more about it?
Yeah. So this, okay, you've been sick, right?
Yeah.
So you've been sick. There's a side of the sickness that's pleasant, you know. Like we don't think about sickness as being pleasant, but it depends on. This is different for everybody, you know. there's a part where it feels like you're hallucinating, or there's a part where you feel like pathetic, and then one of your family members or loved one or whatever, they come, oh, like, you know, and they just hug you or whatever, and that feels nice, or they're nicer to you or whatever it is. Like, so there's like, it's kind of a toxic relationship, you know, that I'm talking about, and the fever and like the heat and the cold are representing, you know, like the opposite emotions. So, and in this case, it's more looking for heat versus looking for cold. You know, so, and it is like it is drawn a little abstract, which is why it's like not as easy to follow. Yeah, because it is kind of drawn in a way that pulls you to. It's kind of like look at this. Look at that. Look at that. What's the name of that? What is the name of the show? You know what I mean? Yeah. That's what I'm kind of doing, you know? So I'm just like taking you different places. And so this is a lot more playful than usual. So that's the reason why it's kind of like, wait, what do you mean by that? What are you trying to say? Where are you going? You know, because essentially it's just like, you know, like, I show you the photographs, and then you have to figure out the murder, or, you know, the thing, right? Yeah.
In 2 out of 3 of the pieces, you play around a lot with like heat and cold, like hot and cold. In one of them, it's sort of like you want like the hot, and like the cold it's like the tundra in comparison with the mother. That you use like tundra, you use freezing and frigid. Then with this one, it's like that heat and that fever is unwelcome, yet at the same time it's like, oh no, I really do enjoy this. Is that like is that intentional? Do you enjoy using like the juxtaposition of hot and cold in a lot of your writing? Do you find it useful?
Yeah, I like to bring a lot of different elements, like sensory elements into it. And when it comes to sometimes I'll talk about like pressure, you know, like pressing against something. And sometimes, you know, heat and cold. But I think it's in the case, for example, in like the comfort of mother sickness, it's easy to use that because you have a relationship with the cold, you have a relationship with the heat. But to everybody is different. You know what I mean? Like I was born in the tropics, so it's different than if somebody was born in the tundra. Maybe for them it's more natural and it feels nicer too. So it just depends. But at least what you can come up with is that there's a contrast, and that contrast gives life to something. It's kind of like if you start talking about like color and the absence of color, that immediately has, you know, emotional ramifications. So I think in any contrast is really, really useful, you know, for writing. So I do tend to use like, you know, just like sensory stuff, but also it could just be in the form of like, you know, pressure or fire or friction.
So like tactile things. Like, for the reader to kind of like connect, I guess, to it better.
Yeah. And sometimes it can also be like the shape of an object too. Like it just depends, you know. Like I think like when we read something, I like the fact that it's working at different layers, you know? So when you read one, it's like a straightforward story, but then you start looking into it and you're like, oh, the heat and the cold means something else. Oh, like the height means something else. And then you kind of start, you know, it's like a little puzzle kind of, but not intentional, just coming from the subconscious. So sometimes when I see that pop up, I'm like, well, I guess that's the mood I'm in. Purple and yellow. So, you know, purple, yellow, whatever, and trying to figure out other ways to say it, right? So, yeah.
Do you find it's easier to like convey in your writing when you're using like sensory words? Do you find it's easier to, like, if you're writing about relationships, all of these pieces sort of speak on like different relationships, whether they are with family, whether they could be seen as romantic or with like friends, however you see it. do you find that using like heat, pressure, those words make it easier to convey those relationships in writing? If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely an avenue of it, and at least so you can get in, like in this case, so you can get in touch with the narrator, the protagonist, a little bit more. Then you understand their emotional experience a little bit more, you know. But it's difficult because, like, maybe for you, you're more of like a sound person, you know, and if you're more auditory, then you're looking for those cues, right?
Yeah.
So it depends. I think some pieces are auditory, some more, you know, it just changes. But it is easier for me to kind of how do you explain, like, you know, what you feel? Like, I feel. Excuse me. I don't like when people say like I love you, right? I mean, I'm not saying I don't like it. I'm just saying like I don't like the fact that it's just like, what does that mean? I don't understand what that means. It's abstract. Like, I'm really cold. So for me, that's too abstract. Like, that just means you're cold. How cold? I don't know. You know, is it dangerous or is it like, you know what I mean? Like, so like that's the reason why I like to use like similes or metaphors or something to equate like that. So that way I understand. I'm like, oh, okay, this is like an area, you know, like I am, like I give you the number of degrees and you know, oh, that's higher than normal. That's kind of dangerous, right? That's where I'm at. So versus just telling you, you know, I'm really cold and it's, I mean, you can do it. Yeah. It's just like, I like to kind of use contrast and comparisons to kind of draw out, like, you know, your, like, so you understand, you know, like a little pinpoint, you know? Yeah. So yeah, I do find it very useful.
It's like the details help bring out the story more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure. And the more, like, to a certain degree, having those details, now I'm not telling you anything. I'm just telling you that, like, what's there. You decide, you know, what that means. And that's what I like to do. I don't like to walk people by the hand. I mean, like, I need you to stop and stare this in this way and look at the corner. I don't want that. I just want to be like, here's a painting, you know, absorb it in whatever way you want to, right? Let's walk down this way. So it's not like really hand holding, but it's more of like, let's spend some time in this area. Do you see anything interesting? No? Okay, let's move on. Let's go over here. You know, it's just kind of like that. So it's more of like a more freedom in that aspect, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So it's like you sort of enjoy the idea of the reader like absorbing and making your writing, like interpreting your writing, I guess. Like introducing them to the concepts and then letting them translate the concepts to themselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, everything is going to speak differently to everybody. Even if I had a twin, it's going to speak different to them. So I like to leave enough room that, like, it can honor anybody, you know, so it doesn't have to be like restricted to like Juan vision, you know, it can just, it's like a global thing. Yeah. So.
That's really cool. So, like, in closing, what do you hope for people to get out of your writing? If it's their first time seeing it, they don't know anything about you, what would you hope that they get out of it?
That they also write. That just to be curious, you know, just to explore and to be curious, to ask questions, to, you know, this is all just an exploration, you know, and to find out, you know, something, you know, something that they can connect to and then make it real, you know. So I invite everybody to write. Every time that, you know, somebody asks me something, I'm like, you have a problem, write it down. Like, because I feel like when you write something down, you're taking it from your head and you're putting it on a piece of paper, and now it doesn't have to have space in your head. So you know, just, I think it's just an invitation to be curious and to try new things, probably. Yeah.
Do you this is so off topic. Do you have like a journal? Do you like write in a journal?
I do, but the journal is like, I don't know how, like, you know, like what different people think of journals and that type of stuff. But my journal is not like every day. It's just like sometimes something comes up. But I have I write every day, and I write like little snippets on my phone sometimes of like, ooh, this would be really cool, you know, like scene or like an image or a dream or just whatever comes up. And then sometimes I look at it and I'm like, I want to write about something, I don't know exactly what, and then I just look at all the different things. I'm like, oh yeah, that seems cool. Let me just, and then, you know, so yeah, those like, so that's kind of a journal in a way.
Yeah, it is,
Because like the way that journals were introduced to me were like, that it's not a diary, it's not like Dear Diary today, and it's just like, nothing has to happen. Like nothing happened today, nothing to report. Like not like that. A journal, it's like a moment of like really emotional or some beautiful moment, and you write it down, and that's what, you know, I was introduced, and I was like, I like that. So yeah. What about you? Do you have one?
No. I have like I guess I kind of have one. No, that's a lie. It's like a planner. Like I'll sometimes like write notes in it, but it's primarily for like academic stuff because I'm a busy person. Yeah. Do you prefer writing like digitally or like more analog? Like is it like laptop, phone?
You know what? To be honest with you, I think digital more now. But it's just different. The problem is that the reason I'm doing it digitally is because of time. I don't have the time to write everything by hand and then transcribe it. Oh God, that's that's a lot. So usually it's been more digital than anything, just because of the time factor. Yeah.
Are you a phone person or like a laptop person?
When it comes to writing?
Yeah.
Oh, definitely laptop. I mean, the phone, I'll write something, but I can't. Like, I've done it. Yeah. Like, it's like, I gotta get this out and just write it. But if, like, laptop, and I actually like, I have a desktop, and I actually like my desktop better because it feels like more grounded. The keyboard is also kind of like, the keys are kind of harder to press. So it feels more intentional. And I feel like everything works faster, so I'm like, I don't need any lags. Like, I just need everything to just come out, you know. So yeah, I would say that.
Nice. Yeah, it's almost like a writing sin, but I love writing on my phone.
That's fun.
I love doing it on my. It's really funny because I was talking to the editor-in-chief, Anthony, actually, shout out to him. I was talking to him, and I'm always on my phone. Like, I'll get like screen time, and it'll be like 10 hours, and it'll be like 5 of it's like all of my notes app, because that's where I primarily write. So I like asking people like where they like writing. You know, you can learn a lot about someone by like what they prefer. Like with the desktop being more like grounded, I consider that reflects a lot in your writing. Your writing is very grounded. You have a very distinct voice. Like, it's kind of like you know where you want it to go. And yet there's so much room for interpretation, which I think is reflected a lot in this conversation. So, do you have anything to plug before we start going?
No. The Vernal Pool. Everybody submit to the Vernal Pool. It's an awesome opportunity for anybody to just get their work that they're already doing, they already had, to just put it out somewhere and get more eyes on it. I got a lot of attention from just doing that, sending like a resume or a cover letter to like a magazine or something. I feel like that gives it more, like, they're just like, they've been published somewhere. They don't know what the Vernal Pool is. And, you know, and especially if it's backed up by the university, they're just like, well, okay, that's actually pretty good. Yeah. So that could be the thing that takes it to the next level. So. Yeah.
Nice. We should probably. You brought your dog.
Yes.
I know. Is she?
Yeah, she.
Yes. Okay, I remember. What's her name?
Moksha.
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 Can I ask the story behind the name?
Yeah, it means liberation from the karmic cycle.
Ooh.
So like, there's in some in the Eastern world, essentially, if you die, you get reincarnated because you have things to resolve, etc. Moksha is when you're done and you just become one with God.
Wow. What an interesting name for a dog.
Yes.
Interesting name in general. Well, thank you so much for being on this episode. This is either the first or the second.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
No, I'm glad. It was a really good conversation. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. And thank you, Moksha, for coming on as well. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed that discussion as much as I did. If you're interested in seeing past editions of The Vernal Pool, check out our website, thevernalpool.ucmerced.edu, or by clicking the link in the description. UC Merced undergraduates who are interested in submitting their creative writing or visual art for publication can find detailed instructions on how to do so on our website. To make sure you catch future episodes of the Reflection Pool podcast, please consider subscribing to this channel or following us on Spotify. To connect further, follow us on Instagram and Twitter by clicking the link in the description or even searching for @vernalpool_UCM on both platforms. Thanks again for listening. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Bye.